Hi, welcome aboard. Australia would have one of the highest four-wheel drive ownership rates in the world, and we would also have one of the highest recreational four-wheel drive utilisation rates in the entire world. And because of that, we're well supplied with the best of four-wheel drives manufactured everywhere in the world. We get four-wheel drives from every country that builds four-wheel drives. And the four-wheel drives that we get in this country are absolutely superb. They're state-of-the-art and they really do the job. But Australia has some very special conditions. Now, various conditions in Australia are duplicated in other parts of the world, but I don't think there's any other country which would have the combination of accessible four-wheel drive conditions that you can find in Australia. One holiday you might be on the beach at Fraser Island, the next holiday you may be clawing your way up to the tip of Cape York. The next holiday you could be spending 3 days completely away from civilization in the middle of the Simpson Desert. Now, for that reason, four-wheel drives for Australian conditions have very specific and special requirements, and the Australian four-wheel drive aftermarket is the only market which can service those requirements. Now, foremost among those four-wheel drive aftermarket accessory suppliers are TJM Products, who have retail outlets all over Australia and who've spent the last 24 years since their inception designing and developing and researching a huge range of four-wheel drive accessories which are directly relevant to Australian four-wheel drive users. Now, having said that, it's also true to say that everybody who owns a four-wheel drive has slightly different requirements. And that's where TJM really comes in, because it's possible with their huge range of optional aftermarket accessories for an individual to customise his four-wheel drive to exactly suit his individual requirements. Now, over the next few weeks, we're going to show you, walk you through, if you like, the range of TJM accessories and show you just how relevant they are to specific applications within the market. But before we look at that, I really should tell you, we are at Black Duck Valley, which is at the head of the Lockyer Valley, just south of Gatton in southeast Queensland. We're on the top of a peak. Greg Deety has a four-wheel drive recreational centre here, around about 500 acres. He's got tracks right through it, and he really does have every single possible condition that you are likely to find in four-wheel drives. He's got some superb river fordings, and I have to say that some of the boulders in those that river are just about up to the ground clearance of the best of the four-wheel drives. He's got some extremely steep mountain climbs, and in fact we're on the top of a mountain here which has around about a 270-degree magnificent view of the valley looking north towards Gatton. Some beautiful little farmhouses down in the valley. It really is a superb place to visit. Now, more about that in a coming episode of the show, but let's take a closer look at TJM. There's an old saying that from small acorns big oak trees grow, and that's exactly the case with TJM. Back in 1973, three friends got really interested in four-wheel driving, and they decided that the short wheelbase Toyota Land Cruiser that one of them owned didn't quite come up to their requirements as far as aftermarket equipment was concerned. So they got busy and very carefully built a roof rack for it and also a bull bar. Now, a couple of their friends saw these products when they were finished and said, we need one of those, and all of a sudden the three friends were in business. Now, you'll meet them in coming weeks. Their initials of their surnames are TJ and M. We'll leave you to meet the individuals a little later, but with a lot of care, with a lot of forethought, TJM has now grown into a business which employs 250 employees in their factory, supports 200 extra employees in their chain of around 40 retailers scattered all over Australia. And one of the reasons for their ongoing success is the fact that the three partners, along with their executive staff and of course the factory staff, are very serious about what they do. They are serious, full-time four-wheel drive enthusiasts who have toured all over Australia and in other places several times in their four-wheel drives. They know exactly what is required, and they've maintained that enthusiasm over the 20-odd years, since they're 25 years since they first started. Now, that has allowed them to not only source what was needed as far as Indigenous Australian four-wheel drive accessories was concerned, but also their attitude has been nothing but absolute excellence. They will accept nothing but the very best, And as a result of that, the factory is really high tech. In fact, I was quite amazed. They have machinery there which bends heavy gauge, very large diameter aluminium tube without wasting it, and that's a very difficult thing to do. It has to be the very latest machinery. They have CAD-CAM machinery which automatically plasma cuts the various components for all of the accessories that they make. They even have robot controlled welders to help weld the components together. They have a polishing shop, and they have everything that's needed in order to make the very best of products. Now, that dedication to excellence has also made them the first manufacturers in the entire world to make bull bars which have been designed to be compatible with airbag equipped vehicles. Now, that applies to passenger vehicles, vans, and also, of course, four-wheel drives. And all of their accessories conform to the Australian design rules, including their airbag compatible bull bars. Now, there's been a bit of controversy in recent years about bull bars, particularly sensationalised by the mainstream media. We, over the next few weeks, will show you exactly what bull bars mean to owners of four-wheel drive and other vehicles, and the way in which TJM have serviced the needs of those users of those vehicles in the absolute best way possible. Now, it's a fascinating story. We'll be going out into the boonies, and we'll be doing some pretty serious four-wheel driving to show you how it all works, and I promise you it's going to be a fascinating series in coming weeks on Chris Conroy's Leisure World. Now, I promise you there's a TJM retail outlet near you. If you would like to know more about their accessories, call in and say hello. Tell them you saw it on the show. We will have videos of all of our segments available through the TJM retailers in the next few weeks, so you'll be able to follow the series on your video machine as well as on the show. So keep an eye open for that. It's a truly exciting development for us, and also, I'm sure, for anybody who owns a four-wheel drive. We'll be back right after this break. Hi, welcome aboard. Australians are a resourceful lot. When a problem arises, we're able to fill it, usually with technology which is simple and effective. A case in point is the humble roo or bull bar. Our country and outback areas are largely unfenced, and the combination of livestock and the millions of kangaroos which roam freely, along with their habit of jumping in front of rather than away from approaching vehicles, has cost many lives in the country, as well as causing millions of dollars of property damage. The obvious answer in the early days was to fit a barrier of some kind to the front of the vehicle to soak up the impact and provide the occupants with a measure of protection. This was accomplished with some pretty horrific water pipe structures back then, but as time has passed, as with all good ideas, the humble bull bar has become more sophisticated. They're now made from welded steel or aluminium tube, designed to absorb the energy of impact as efficiently as possible and in a controlled way, and fully integrated with the styling of the vehicles to which they're fitted. A couple of years ago, the first airbag-equipped vehicles hit the Australian market. This presented something of a dilemma to the bull bar industry. The problem centres around the fact that even a gentle impact on a bull bar can sometimes trigger the airbag when it's not needed. It became clear that considerable research and development would be needed in order to design a bull bar system which would be suitable for all vehicles fitted with airbags. For many years, TJM has been Australia's largest manufacturer of bull bars. They export all over the world and build hundreds of bull bars for all types of vehicles each week. Lloyd Taylor, Managing Director of TJM, took the airbag-compatible bull bar development as a personal challenge, and over the past 3 years he's developed the world's first fully tested range of compatible bull bars. TJM designed and manufactured bull bars are supplied as original equipment to Australian car manufacturers and distributors, and I asked Lloyd Taylor how this was achieved.
Well, the first thing we had to understand was how the bull bars performed in an accident situation, because that's when airbags come into play in accidents and in major accidents. So we had to consider that aspect of, consider the aspect of bull bars, the car, the combination of the two, and how that affected the crash pulse of the vehicle, how that therefore affected the occupants in an accident. And we did that by a number of ways, initially by computer simulation, simulating the whole vehicle in a crash situation, with and without our bar structures on, understanding what happens there, and then we proceeded on to a dynamic and static testing of the bar structures on their own, and then we considered dynamic and static testing of the bar structures on vehicles, inclusive of on car, later on in the program, where we were testing our vehicles, where we were testing our bull bars installed on airbag-equipped vehicles in exactly the same situation as in accidents. That primarily was to verify our earlier research and our design philosophies, which we developed through that process.
So you actually crashed vehicles into barriers. You did the famous crash dummy test. You actually crashed them into barriers and bent vehicles and bull bars and saw with sensors in various parts of the vehicle exactly how it behaved.
Yes, we bent a lot of bull bars and we bent quite a few cars.
Now, obviously from that you developed the airbag compatible bull bars.
That's correct.
Now, how did they differ from your traditional design bull bars?
Most designs remained the same. In some cases we had to do some minor modifications to the structures or the mounting systems just to ensure that they didn't interfere with the airbag triggering. We can't say that all bars don't interfere with airbag triggering. That's incorrect, and we have to assess every single one to ensure that it is not affecting the airbag triggering.
So how many bars have you verified as being airbag compatible? How many models?
Our list of airbag compatible bars is around about the 100 mark at this point of time.
There are standards for aftermarket accessories, aren't there?
There are standards for aftermarket accessories, and during the last 2.5 years, going on to 3 years, we've been working on an Australian standard in conjunction with federal and state legislative bodies, and that standard, whilst it isn't empowered at this point of time, specifically this standard is for bull bars, it isn't empowered at this point of time, but it is in the process of becoming law in this country.
Welcome back. I'm told that the utility is one of those wonderful Australian inventions which has found its way all over the world and enhanced people's quality of life by being so versatile. Now obviously utility combines the carrying capacity of a light truck with the comfort, road holding and styling of a sedan. Now nowadays you can buy utes with crew cabs, you can carry up to 5 people, or with the standard utility you can carry 3 people. So for somebody with a small family can have the dual benefit of using a utility during the week in his professional life and using it for pleasure on the weekend. Now one of the problems with utilities is that they don't give you any security for what's in the back of the ute, and that's where TJM's Tops come in. TJM have been building Tops for around about 14 years. They have refined the design, as with all of their other products, over that 14-year period of time, so that now the Top does everything that anybody who owns a utility could possibly require, and it does it on the basis of an article which has been really superbly designed. Now, they're made out of fiberglass using standard fiberglass moulding techniques. 2 of the requirements as far as design are concerned are that they, or 3 of them if you like, they fit in with the styling of the vehicle, they enhance the overall look of the vehicle, and they're strong enough to resist entry. In other words, they make the contents secure, and also to support a load on the top. Now more about the load on the top a little bit later, but apart from the basic styling, it's also possible to design into a fiberglass moulding contours which enhance its overall strength and rigidity. You can see that from these ridges down the top of this Top that you're looking at the moment. Now, as I said, they're a basic fiberglass moulding which is made by TJM, and then they come into the factory here at Geebung in Brisbane, and they are fitted out to suit the vehicle and the purpose for which they're intended. Now, as I said earlier, these utilities are used by a huge range of people. They're used by electricians, plumbers, carpenters, people like that. And they're also used by people who go camping. And the same ute is often used for the dual purpose. Now, with that in mind, TJM offer a range of fit-outs as far as the canopy itself is concerned. You're looking at the sliding windows now, which are pretty well a standard fitting. But if you are a tradesman and you need a bit more access and a bit more ability to move into the side of the vehicle, you can have this tradesman's door, which has a flush hatch which opens up and gives you a tremendous amount of access right across to the centre of the vehicle through the side of the canopy. And this tray is fairly long. You'd have to really jump in and lay on your belly to reach something that's up the front. With this sort of door, you can do that very easily. And as I said, it has a flush lock there which has a key and which makes the entire canopy really secure. Now, a lot of the modern utilities have an extremely long back, and they're very useful vehicles. For those with a long back, there is a side access window which gives you access all the way along the full length of the vehicle, and also allows you to take quite long pieces of steel or aluminium tube or timber or whatever out of the side of the ute. Very useful and superbly designed. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that these tops aren't just styled to fit in with the look of the vehicle, but they also have contours in them which stiffen them. But a lot of tradesmen and also campers carry some quite heavy gear on racks on the top, and it's necessary to spread the load from those racks down into the structure of the vehicle. Come and I'll show you how that's done. Now, Peter is fitting a support strut here which takes the load from the ladder rack down onto the top lip of the steel ute back. That is fitted to all racks that are fitted to TJM canopies, to Tura tops, and it overcomes any problems of the canopy itself being damaged or deformed by the load, and it means that you can load the canopy up to the maximum loaded specification by TJM or by the rack manufacturer, the rack supplied by TJM, and that certainly greatly increases the carrying capacity of the Tura top with a rack on it. I don't think there can be any doubt that that's a tremendously useful piece of equipment, one which greatly enhances the overall utility and particularly the security of the vehicle. Now, as I've said before on the show, TJM have 40 outlets in all states of Australia. If you have a requirement for a Tura top, regardless of what sort of vehicle you may own, there'll be a TJM Tura top in the range to suit you, and you can order it with whatever range of accessories you require from your local TJM outlet. We'll be back right after this break. Hi, welcome aboard. We're very fortunate in Australia. For a country of our population, we have access to every quality four-wheel drive vehicle that's built in the world. Now, Australia is a nation of four-wheel drivers. We use them commercially. Our primary producers use them extensively. They use all of the qualities that the four-wheel drive brings with it. And we also have a huge recreational use of four-wheel drives. Now, one of the problems that the designers and manufacturers of four-wheel drives come up with is that, as in every design exercise, they are required to compromise. They compromise all aspects of the design of the vehicle. And that means that in certain cases, particularly here in Australia, the four-wheel drives that come off the shelf are not necessarily adequate for certain uses. Now, don't misunderstand, this is not a criticism of four-wheel drives as they come off the shelf in any way. It's just that we have very special requirements for our four-wheel drives. We have extensive rough terrain off-road use where road height and suspension rigidity or stiffness is a very important factor. And we also tow a lot of vehicles. We tow caravans, we tow horse floats, and we tow heavy boats. Now, the four-wheel drives as they come off the shelf generally won't have a suspension capable of coping with the loads that are put upon it, particularly when you're towing a heavy vehicle. Now, as you can see, here is a standard 80 series Land Cruiser, which is superb on the highway, but when you put a heavy boat on it, it sags in the back. Now, that brings with it a number of problems, among them being the fact that the geometry of the suspension has now been altered. It doesn't handle as well, and also the front wheels have lightened up, so your steering and your braking in the front are nowhere near as effective. Now, TJM for many years have been researching are aftermarket suspension kits for the full range of four-wheel drives, which enable the owner to give his four-wheel drive or her four-wheel drive exactly the characteristics that are required for their specific use. Now, if you look at this 80 series Land Cruiser, which has a TJM Series 2000 suspension kit fitted, you'll see that the ride height is level all the way through. That makes it easy and safe to tow the boat, whatever the circumstances may be, and it doesn't affect the handling of the car in any way. Now, TJM have a special fitting service in all of their retail outlets for their four-wheel drive kits. Here you see the springs going in my old 1985 Land Cruiser, which of course has leaf springs. The difference that it made to the vehicle, not only when it was towing but also on the highways, is absolutely remarkable. Spring rates are changed. They're changed so that the initial movement is soft, which makes it ideal for highway driving. But as the load comes on, the springs stiffen up and make it ideal for off-road driving, and of course the road height is also substantially increased. In this case you see a coil spring going into the rear of an 80 series Land Cruiser, and in this case it also has an airbag suspension unit, a supplementary airbag suspension unit, which comes into play as the coil springs are compressed and adjusts the rate of movement of the springs according to the load and the degree of movement. Now, this is a fairly complex exercise, and it not only encompasses the springs, but it also encompasses the steering shock absorber and the shock absorbers themselves. Obviously they are changed to be stiffer and make the car better, and it's also again possible to control body roll by changing the stiffness of the anti-roll bar. Now, as I said, this is a complex exercise, but it's one that TJM have researched for long enough and thoroughly enough to be able to fit to a car exactly what the owner needs as far as his suspension characteristics are concerned, and make that versatile enough so that the performance and feel of the vehicle when it's not under load and when it's not off-road, in other words when it's on the highway, are not appreciably altered. Obviously the ride will be a little stiffer, but that means that the tyres and wheels stay on the road in extreme situations for longer than they would with the standard one. The braking is enhanced, the handling is enhanced, traction all the way across the board is greatly enhanced, and it certainly turns it into a vehicle which may not by definition be necessarily better than the standard one, but is certainly far more suitable and safer for people who have specific requirements for their four-wheel drives. Now, as I said, the four-wheel drives really are superb. We're very lucky in this country, but if you have specific requirements for your four-wheel drive and you wish to adjust its ride and handling characteristics for your particular purpose, it's possible to do that by calling in and seeing any of your TJM four-wheel drive retailers who can study your particular problem, who will make recommendations, and who can supply and fit the four-wheel drive suspension kit for your vehicle to suit your requirements. And by the way, there are some new vehicles on the market now. The Ford Explorer is a case in point. This particular vehicle is being fitted with the first of the experimental Series 2000 suspension kits. And it was found that whilst the Explorer is a superb vehicle, it's designed for boulevard use in America, and it really was very soft in the suspension and not generally suitable for anybody who has any idea of going off-road. There have been several hundred of these Explorer kits supplied so far, and owners report absolutely magnificent results. So as I said, you've got a four-wheel drive, you want to enhance its road holding and its ability to go off-road, and particularly its ability to tow heavy trailers, whatever they may be, TJM are your people. We'll be back right after this break. A few weeks ago we covered TJM four-wheel drive accessories research and development program on their airbag compatible bull bars. Now, just to clear up a point, one of the problems with bull bars on early airbag equipped vehicles was the fact that the bull bar would confuse the sensors in the vehicle and fire the airbag prematurely. So TJM set about building a test rig to test motor vehicles, and they tested their own personal motor vehicles initially, to find out the best way of mounting the bull bars so that the shock wave was transmitted through the chassis in exactly the way it would be if the bull bar weren't fitted. In other words, in the way the original designers had intended. Now, you're looking at the first test session now. It was quite extensive at Geebung. It was a temporary test setup. The readouts were obviously very accurate. And as a result of the success of this test session, TJM have set up a permanently installed test rig in a part of their large factory at Geebung, which has computer readouts from load sensors all over the vehicle, which has a weight which can be varied and which swings back to various degrees in order to simulate impact on the bull bar at various road speeds. Now, the sensors go along the chassis of the motor vehicle. They test the shock wave as it moves through, or they sense the shock wave as it moves through. And the tests have been so successful that original equipment vehicle manufacturers from around the world are now contacting TJM to ask them to test their vehicles so that TJM bull bars can be incorporated as original equipment, accessory equipment if you like, in retail outlets around the world. Now, this is an expensive undertaking. It's one which shows the thoroughness with which TJM approach all of their manufacturing and supply and research and development of all of their products, including their Series 2000 suspension, including all other aspects of their aftermarket four-wheel drive accessories. And once again, it points up the fact that Australian technology and Australian dedication can yield a product which is relevant to people all over the world and generate huge export markets. We'll be back right after this break. We've spent the last several hours this morning on the first tests of the AirTech snorkels to be fitted to four-wheel drive vehicles. Now, I'm sure most people have seen snorkels on four-wheel drive vehicles. They're becoming more and more common on Australia's roads. And most people would assume that the vehicle was habitually driven through deep water and that's why the snorkel is there. Now, that is probably the case, but is by no means all of the story, and it never is, because there are always peripheral advantages to the fitting of an accessory like this which really make it relevant to the vast spread of four-wheel drive brands of vehicles and also of usages. And I'll tell you for why. The air for the engine through this AirTech snorkel is taken from here through an air intake. Now, without that, all vehicles have their air taken from under the bonnet in the engine compartment or from under the guard there. Now, that is the worst possible environment to take the air for the engine to breathe, because even on sealed roads there's a lot of dust and grit flies around. Obviously on unsealed roads the dust problem is even greater. It gets built up in there, it's sucked up by the engine cooling fan into the engine compartment, it swirls around, and whilst the element in the air cleaner does do its job, it's never quite capable of filtering the fine particles of dust. And as the dust builds up on the outside of the air cleaner, the engine has to suck harder. It will suck those fine particles of dust into the engine and inevitably it will cause wear. Now, once you fit one of these, the air is taken from up here, which is well above the normal level of dust and grit when you're driving even on an unsealed road. And as these pictures you're looking at now will show, the dust generally comes up to about this height and no higher, and it's very thin as you get higher above the vehicle. So that means that a vehicle fitted with an AirTech snorkel is using clean air or cleaner air from much higher up above the road. Now, there's a great advantage there. The other advantage is more subtle, but probably more important, particularly for people who won't be driving their four-wheel drives through rivers. And that is the fact that the snorkel faces forward. As the vehicle moves forward, ram air is introduced into the plenum, which represents the area from which the engine takes its intake air. The engine therefore doesn't have to suck as hard, and in some cases that plenum will be slightly pressurised. So you get a huge advantage in the easy breathing of the engine. As well, the intake air is not being taken from the engine compartment and is therefore much cooler, further enhancing combustion efficiency and performance. These are made using an extremely high-tech rotational moulded plastic technique. They're designed so that there is an extension on the air intake for the air cleaner canister inside the vehicle, which matches up with this. There are no air leaks anywhere around the vehicle, so the thing really does work extremely well. they're reasonably priced, and because of the advantages of the engine breathing cleaner air and also the ram air effect, the advantages, if you use your vehicle for any sort of time each year, are really great in engine life and also in fuel economy. Now, once again, this is a superb product. It's completely Australian conceived, designed, manufactured and distributed through TJM's 44 retail outlets around Australia. If you have a four-wheel drive, if you do any sort of country driving or water driving or even city driving, you should seriously consider the fitting of an AirTech snorkel.